Okay, this is Mr. K, and I'm going to do a simple block assembly using Autodesk Inventor, and it's going to use, as shown in this picture right here, a rectangular prism, a cylinder, and a cube stacked on top of each other. So the first step that we have to do is to make the three parts, and that is done by going to the part icon up here and not clicking on the picture, but clicking on the arrow next to it and then coming down and clicking on the part icon. So that starts a new part, and we'll save it. Always save as 1-inch cube. As you can see, I've put it in a folder called Simple Block Assembly, which you would make in your Windows Explorer folder. You'd go to your PLTW folder, make a new folder called Simple Block Assembly, and then save this part as a 1-inch cube. Once you've saved it, we go over here to primitives and start with a box to make our cube. So the box automatically takes you to choose one of three planes, and we're going to choose the XY plane here. And you can look at your 3D indicator down here and see that it is only showing X and Y now, so we're in 2 dimensions, and it wants you to draw a rectangle or a square. So in our case a square. I'll click once, drag, and then I don't click again. I look here and see where one of the dimensions is blue. It's asking me for that dimension, so I type in 1 and then tab to go to the other dimension, and it will also be 1, and then I push enter, and the box command automatically takes me and asks me how much I want to extrude my square in this case. Since it's a cube, it'll also be 1 inch, and just that simple, we have a 1 by 1 by 1 cube. If I hit the little house button up here, it takes me to the home view, and I will save it. Once you've saved it once, you come up and hit the save icon, because if you do save as, it will only let you save it as another name or a copy of that file, so you have to hit the save icon to save it as the 1-inch cube. So we have the 1-inch cube. Now we're going to do a 1 by 1 by 2.5 inch rectangular prism, and what we'll do is we'll modify the cube to make that prism. But before I do anything, I want to save a copy of it. So save as, and call it 1 by 1 by 2.5 rectangular prism. Save. And now I have an exact copy of the cube, but it's in a new file called 1 by 1 by 2.5 rectangular prism. And the way to make this a prism now is to click on this face, and you get 3 options: edit extrude, edit sketch, or create sketch. And we want to edit our extrude to change it from 1 to 2.5. Now the easy way to zoom out or pan, I'm going to show you. With the middle scroll button, if I scroll towards the screen, I can zoom out. If I scroll towards myself, I can zoom in. So I zoom out so I can see my whole prism. If I push that middle scroll button, I can pan, keep it pushed while I move the mouse. And if I hit shift and push the middle button down and keep it pushed down, I can rotate. And then I can always go back to my home view. So I want to save this again as the 1 by 1 by 2.5. So I have 2 out of 3 of my parts to do my assembly. Now we're going to have to make a new part. So we go back up here, hit the arrow, new part, and instead of a box, we're going to do a cylinder. I choose the XY plane, and the starting shape for a cylinder is a circle. So I click the middle, drag, and I don't click again, and I push 1, enter for a 1-inch diameter, and it asks me how much I want to extrude it, and I'm going to do 2.5 inches. Again, I can go to the home button to see the whole part, and I'm going to save this file, save as, 1 by 2.5 cylinder, and I just put 1 by 2.5 CYL and save it. So I have the cube, the prism, and the cylinder, and I'm ready to put them together in what's called an assembly. So I come up here like I'm going to make a new part, and instead of clicking on part, I'm going to click on assembly. And this is where I bring my parts in to put them together or to build them. So the way I do that is place component. I click on place component and I find my simple block assembly folder. First thing I want to place is a cube. I click on it and say open, and this pops up and says the file into which you are placing this component has not been saved. So I say that's okay, I'm going to save it right after I place it and say yes. Click to place the cube, and then if I zoom out I could place as many cubes as I want, but I only want one in this case, so I'm going to escape and hit the undo button until I just have one cube. So this is a good time to save it. Save as, and I'm just going to call it 3 block assembly. Now I need to bring my other 2 parts in, so I go to place component, and I'm going to bring in the 1 by 1 by 2.5 inch rectangular prism, and then place component again, the 1 by 2.5 cylinder. And now I have my 3 parts. I push escape, and again I'm going to save it as I go. So if you remember, we had the prism down on the bottom, the cylinder stacked on top of it, and then the cube on top of the cylinder. So the first step before we put anything together is to ground the bottom piece so it won't move. So I right click on it, ground it, and now I can move the cylinder and I can move the cube, but I can't move this prism because it's locked in place, which is what I want. So the way to put the pieces together is not simply just to move them and approximate where they go, but to use the constraint command. And under constraint there's a little window called assembly, and that's where we're going to be. And the type of assembly we start with is mate, and there are 2 types of mate. One is just simply mate, where you push this surface together with this surface. It's like you're sticking it together with glue. Or you can do flush, which means this surface, for instance, would be in the same plane as this surface. So first we're going to do mate. I'm going to mate the bottom of the cylinder to the top of the rectangular prism, and I always have to push apply, because if I don't, it doesn't lock it into place, and I try to do something else and it messes it up. So always push apply. Now I'm going to center this cylinder within the short distance of the rectangular prism and the long distance. And the way to do that is, instead of mate, I got to come over here to tangent, and instead of outside tangent I'm going to do inside tangent, because I want my piece to stay within the depth of the prism. So I click the face of the cylinder with the face of the prism and apply, and now those are lined up. And I do the same thing with the short face here, except now I don't want it in the same plane or tangent, I want it offset. And if this is a 2.5 inch prism and a 1 inch cylinder, then I'm going to have half the depth of the prism, which is 1.25 minus half the depth or the diameter of the cylinder, which is 0.5. So 1.25 minus 0.5 is 0.75. So I'm going to offset it 0.75, and you can see that it centers it, and apply. So I have the cylinder in place. Always a good time to save. That way if the computer freezes up or somehow you accidentally exit out, you have this much still in place. Now we're going to put the cube on top of the cylinder. The way to do that is to constrain mate this surface of the cube to the top of the cylinder, apply. I could do what I did before, where I did tangent, and I could make this tangent with this face, and this tangent with this face, and it will work pretty good. But sometimes when you do the step that I'm going to show you after I have it built, it won't quite go back together. So to make sure that it does reassemble, I'm going to make this face flush with this face, and this face of the cube flush with this face of the prism with an offset. So instead of mate, I'm going to do flush, this face with this face, apply, and then this face flush with this face. Again, that's not where I want it. I want it offset so that it's centered on my cylinder, and it would actually have the same offset that I did with the cylinder, which is 0.75 inches, and then enter. So if I click the home button, I now have my little model built, and I save it. And I want it to make it the colors that I showed you before. So the top cube, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make sure I'm in Autodesk Appearance Library, and I'm going to go up and find blue, and it's blue wall paint glossy. And then for the cylinder, I'm going to go to LED and make it LED red on. And then the prism, I'm going to do LED green on. Now it's set up and it's the right colors. I save it. Now to make sure that I've built and constrained it properly, I'm going to use this command free move and this command free rotate. What it does is I can move the pieces away from each other and then rotate them. And if I've constrained it properly, when I come up here and click either local update or global update, it should come back exactly together the way I had built it. So if I hit update, you can see that it went back together. If I look at the top view, everything's in line. If I look at the front view, everything is in line. And then if I look at the side view, everything is where I want it. So you know that it went back together in the correct way, and that's the way you make a really simple 3-block assembly.